So welcome everybody, and I am the president of Artists for Wildlife Conservation. And what we do is we raise funds for other nonprofits that help to save endangered and vulnerable species. And so this time we have a special guest with us, Dr. Gladys Kalema-Zikusoka from Uganda. And you can see her book up on here on the site, Walking with Gorillas. This is a fantastic book that she just put out in the last year, I think. And so I encourage anybody interested in this stuff to read this book. It's really, really excellent about her early life and how she got started in with conservation with public health. So let's see. I just wanted to mention a couple of things about our organization. So one thing that we've started to do recently is we've started to spotlight artists that are passionate about wildlife. So their artwork is not necessarily wildlife, but they are passionate about it. And sometimes they have artwork that is wildlife oriented, sometimes not. But it's just to put out there various people that are really interested in the cause and that happen to be artists that want to support us. Let's see. We have raised funds in the past for a number of other nonprofits, including IFAW, Sheldrick Wildlife Trust, LEWA, Black Mambas, Rhino Mercy, CROW, Center for Rehabilitation of Wildlife, and RAN, Rainforest Action Network. So I'm really excited to have Gladys join us today and add conservation through public health to our list. As you know, we're in the midst of an online auctioning off Henry's beautiful photos, and that's going to be ongoing until April 13th. So you can see that on the website and you can bid anytime. And today we also have joining us Rick Semu, who's on our board, who's a wildlife vet as well. So a number of people today on our Zoom call. So that's our first page, so I can remember everything. And by the way, we had an earthquake today, but it's not like California. Yeah, I actually felt my house like moving like this, and I'm on the East Coast, so that's weird. First of all, Gladys is going to be the first one to speak. So we're so lucky to have her here today. Conservation Through Public Health is her organization, or CTPH. And she's a wildlife veterinarian herself, and recently came out with the book about gorillas and her experiences along from her early life until she started to set up this organization and all the trials and tribulations she went through to get there, which is pretty amazing. She primarily works with gorillas, but also found that working with community health became essential to working with gorillas, as humans and apes can transfer diseases back and forth. So it was really important to mix those two together. And in addition, she has created somebody else is coming to the waiting room. She has created Gorilla Conservation Coffee, which was another vision of hers to help prosperity in the community. So that's another business that she has gotten going. She's gotten many, many awards and shown herself to be a remarkable woman of great drive and passion. And she'll speak briefly about her work, and then we'll move on to Henry Diltz and his wonderful behind the scenes photos, his stories around his photos. And anyone who has questions might be able to, if they can access the chat window, you might be able to ask questions through that, and we'll try to pay attention to that. So I'm very excited to turn things over to Gladys and have her speak about CTPH and how it all started. So welcome, Gladys.
Thank you so much for inviting me. Very excited to be here. And thank you for organizing this. I know we've been in touch for several months. And we founded Conservation Through Public Health based on experiences I had working as the first veterinarian for the Uganda Wildlife Authority in 1996, where they felt that we needed to have a veterinarian because gorilla tourism had just begun. and they were concerned that people were going to make gorillas sick with a fatal flu, such as COVID-19 or something like that. And so I started my job. It was a very exciting first job. I graduated from Royal Vet College, University of London. And so that was my first job, straight out of university. But actually, we found out within 9 months that it wasn't the tourists making the gorillas sick the first time around. It was the local community, because the 2 gorilla groups that were habituated for tourism were spending more and more time outside the park, because now they had lost the fear of people so that tourists could come and visit them. They started to go back in places where they used to range before gorilla tourism had begun and before the park their habitat had been cut. And so they picked up diseases. The Mubare gorilla, the Katendejere gorilla group picked up scabies from the local community because people put out dirty clothing on scarecrows to chase away gorillas, baboons, and other wildlife. And when they do that, they put out dirty clothing because they have poor hygiene. And when they do that, they end up touching the clothing, and that's how it spread through the group. Because actually all of them were scratching by the time they called me. And later on, we lost the baby gorilla because it was too far gone, but we're able to save the rest of them with treatment. Actually, ivermectin worked really well with them. Just one dose actually worked. And then later on, we started to ask ourselves, where could this have come from? And it turned out that it came from the local communities. It took us a while to work that one out. But when we looked around, we saw that they didn't have, they were not covering their rubbish heaps. They're only bathing once a week because it's so hard to get water down those very steep hills to the river. And they weren't covering their rubbish heaps. And there was lots of unhygienic behavior. So they asked me to lead the effort to start health education workshops in the local community. Being the only vet in the organization, they felt I was most appropriate to do it. So I did. And that was a turning point in my life, because I didn't realize when people told me that we don't want to make the gorillas sick, because some of us are already realizing how they're helping us to get out of poverty. The tourists are supporting us. They're providing jobs for our children. And some of the money is building schools. But they were like, we really don't want to make the gorillas sick. But we need health services to be brought closer to us. And we need to strengthen the team that herds them back when they come out with raincoats and gumboots. And we need more health education. So after completing working with the government, I had an opportunity to do a zoo medicine residency in North Carolina State University and the zoo, which was wonderful because I strengthened my clinical skills, but I also got to do a master's looking at tuberculosis in people, wildlife, livestock. And so I came back to Uganda, and during that time, we set up the nonprofit Conservation Through Public Health, where we improve the health of the people and the gorillas and other wildlife together to enable them to coexist. And it's gone really well. People are very excited to get health services because a lot of them had to walk 20 miles to the nearest health center. And now we are strengthening community-based healthcare by training people within their villages to provide the services and also bring along conservation education as well. So they're combining health and conservation services as well, talking about the risks of human and gorilla disease transmission and how we can prevent it, why they should plant trees, why they shouldn't eat bushmeat, but also talking about being healthy and hygienic, having the children you can manage. We got into family planning a few years later when we saw that many people had too many children, like 10 children, and they couldn't give them proper health care or take them to school, and they couldn't break the poverty cycle. And they have to keep going into the forest to poach, to feed a large family, or to cut firewood. So that has gone really well. And over time, we've also set up a Gorilla Health Center, Gorilla Health and Community Conservation Center, where we regularly analyze fecal samples from the gorillas every month. When I started out at Bwindi in 1994, there were only 2 habituated gorilla groups. Now there's 26. Because more and more gorillas are being habituated for tourism. So now 60% of the gorillas are habituated for tourism, which is wonderful. But you have to monitor them all the time. And so we collect fecal samples from their night nests, and my team does, and so do the rangers. And then we analyze them at our Gorilla Health and Community Conservation Field Lab, while we also look out for clinical signs. And we also not only sample gorillas, but we've started to sample people who live next to the gorillas. If the gorillas pick up human parasites, we start to also sample those people with the local health centers and treat their livestock and the people, if necessary, working with the local health authorities, which is good because now, if, let's say we find parasites, human parasites or worms in the gorillas, we're able to deworm the people, deworm the livestock, and in extreme circumstances, get the gorillas treated, make sure the gorillas also get treatment. So we try and look at health, not just by looking at the gorillas only, but also improving the health of the people and their animals. And we find that over time, as we're improving the health of the people and their conservation attitudes, the gorillas are falling sick less often. So we started off by reaching about 2,000 homes, but now we're reaching over 10,000 homes where gorillas regularly come out. And we're working with a team of 429 village health and conservation teams. And they're doing a fantastic job. During COVID, it was really important that everyone wears masks when they go near the gorillas. We really advocated for this. And so now, whenever you come to visit the gorillas, you have to put on a mask so that you don't make them sick, you don't cough on them, or you don't unknowingly pass on something you don't know. But also at the same time, we made sure that the gorilla guardians who held them back have masks, the rangers have masks, and the village health and conservation teams tell people about mask wearing and being more healthy and hygienic. And over time, we found out that people were poaching because they're hungry. So during COVID, we started to provide them with fast-growing seedlings. When Rafiki, a very popular gorilla, he was called Rafiki because he's friendly. He was killed by a hungry bushmeat poacher during the pandemic, which was very, very sad because there was no tourism, and people were used to get tourism money to buy food. And now they're really stuck because there's no tourism and the local economy was down because everybody was in lockdown. So sadly, this gorilla was killed by the bushmeat poacher. And we found that we're going to have more gorillas being killed if we don't do something about it. So we started to provide them with fast-growing seedlings, which grow within 1 to 4 months. We gave each of them a package of 10 seedlings. And now people are able to eat, especially the most vulnerable, including the poacher's wife. The poacher went to jail for 11 years, but his wife was at home, desperate. She had 3 children under the age of 3. She was only 22 years old. So we started to help her as well. And that is really helping. But also during COVID, as Suzanne mentioned, we started Gorilla Conservation Coffee when we found out that many farmers were still going into the forest to poach and collect firewood because they couldn't be porters, rangers, truckers. They weren't all part of the tourism industry. They didn't have a shop to sell crafts. And so we started to engage them in 2017, before the pandemic. My husband actually came up with this idea. He's a founder member of Conservation Through Public Health. He came up with the idea of why don't we build a global coffee brand to help the gorillas through selling coffee to the tourists, and it can also be sold outside. So it's also being sold in America. And this really worked. But during the pandemic, no tourists came, there were lockdowns everywhere. So that was really a challenge for us. We were lucky to get someone in UK who kept ordering coffee, but during the pandemic, we realized that we could keep the farmers going if we can find markets outside Uganda. So finally in 2021, flights could now get back into the US, and we continued selling coffee and being able to keep farmers out of the forest. And also during COVID, something big happened. I finally published my book, Working with Gorillas. Thank you for having it up there. And I would say that COVID gave me time to write, but also didn't give me time to write because we're so busy trying to make sure gorillas don't get sick. With the first wave and then the second wave, the Delta variant was the most frightening because people were really dying in Uganda and we're so concerned that the gorillas could pick it up. So that kept us extremely busy. We made sure everybody gets vaccinated who goes near them. People get tested. The rangers are the first to be vaccinated and conservation personnel. So it's been a really, really busy time during COVID. But I managed to launch this book after COVID last year in 2023. But during the pandemic, my son wrote a book, Zookeeper for a Week, and launched it. He volunteered at the zoo when he was 13 and finally wrote it during the pandemic. And then my mom also launched her book. She's like 95 in May. It took her 20 years to write her book, but we said, we were so worried about her age. We said, you have to launch your book now, and that's also gone really well. So it was a really busy time during COVID. And now after COVID, we're trying to continue to expand our programs, grow our team. We've got more vets on the team, more community coordinators, increase the number of community volunteers. And we're hoping that as more and more people are getting healthy, gorillas will continue to fall sick less often. And I'm just so excited that you're all here today to support our work. Would love you to come and visit us in Uganda, see the work we're doing, buy the coffee, buy the book. And we want to expand to other places where gorillas are found in Africa. And eventually we'd also like to expand the park because it's getting too small for the gorillas, and they're always getting more and more into people's gardens as the population continues to grow because of successful conservation programs. So I'm very excited to be here today talking to you about our work and looking forward to what all that Henry is going to be doing, and Rick and Suzanne. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. It's so wonderful to hear about all the stuff that you're doing. And I never had a big desire to see gorillas before, but boy, after reading your book, that is the next thing I want to see. So elephants are sort of at the top of my list, but I have seen them. So, but I would love to come and see gorillas. So I hope I can come maybe next year and bring my daughter along with me, and hopefully we can come and meet you. And although she has met you in person, I just haven't. But my daughter met you in Colorado last year and got me a signed book. So that's where I got my book from. So anyways, thank you very much. And
Lovely to meet her.
Rick, do you have anything that you wanted to ask? You want to ask?
Yeah, I would love to, because the work you're doing is incredible. And I think just, like I said, on behalf of our organization, thank you for coming out and doing this. This is incredible. And, we're very happy to, be able to support you in the work you're doing, because it sounds like you are making strides, both as, I think, a vet and a conservationist, and a member of your community, which I think is just so incredible. I think one of the big questions that I have is a kind of more a way to, I think, highlight the work you're doing in a way that some people don't really think about. Specifically, what are some of the more unique challenges you think you've had in making people in the local community understand that wildlife is important for their way of life as well? I know you highlighted a couple examples, but I wondered if you could speak on that a little more.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Rick. And actually, I'm excited that my team from Conservation Through Public Health is here, and so is my mother-in-law. She's on the call. She's over here. And I would say there've been a number of challenges, but I think for the community, if you come across as you care more about the gorillas and the forest more than them, it's very difficult to convince them to do anything. Because I remember one time visiting somebody's garden and it had just been destroyed. Banana plants had been destroyed by a very popular gorilla group, Mubare Gorilla Group, which is the first group to be habituated for tourism. And so I asked him, do you think gorillas are important? And he said, yes, I do, because my children are employed by the park, and some of the money from gorilla tourism is shared to build schools, roads. He said, but the individual farmer like me, whose crops are destroyed, I'm not being compensated. And yet tourists came to see gorillas in my garden and I wasn't given any money. And I felt really bad because he really did have a point. The community knew that tourists are coming, they're paying money to the Wildlife Authority. And now they've come to see the gorillas in his garden. So I gave him what money I had in my pocket. That time it was around $2, 5,000 shillings. It's about $2. And I talked to my supervisor and I said to them, is there a way that we can help these people? And so later on, he became one of the leaders of the Human and Gorilla resolution team that herds gorillas back when they come out. It was as a vet, that time I was working as a first vet for UA. I only used to focus on the animals. I never used to think so much about the people. I mean, the community loved me because they knew that when I treat the animals, tourists, they're healthy, so tourists can come and they can somehow benefit. So they really liked the fact that I was doing that, treating the animals. But this time around, when I realized that actually, yes, we're treating the animals, but there's also problems in the community. And so when he became one of the members of, we used to call it Hugo, Human Gorilla Conflict Team, Resolution Team, now we're calling them Gorilla Guardians. He became one of the leaders of the Hugo members to make sure that gorillas are herded back in time. And then his son took over, and then his son headed the Gorilla Guardians. His son was a ranger, and he kind of trained them, because the Gorilla Guardians come from the local community, and they're given incentives like raincoats and gumboots. Recently, we gave them group livestock projects so that they could keep going. And they also monitor the health of the gorillas when they're in community land, and we teach them to look out for sick gorillas as well. And so it became a turning point where I realized we can actually protect the gorillas together with the local community. It's not only conservationists or people hired to do this, but you can actually work with the communities and empower them to protect the gorillas. So yeah, that's one of the instances when it was a bit of a challenge to get them to care when they just destroyed their crops, and some of them even said, look, we plant eucalyptus trees so that we're told to plant eucalyptus trees so we don't have to enter the park to collect firewood. But now the gorillas are eating the bark of the eucalyptus trees, and now my trees are dying. How can I keep liking the gorillas? But, so it's always a very delicate balance for sure. But as long as they're happy that we're improving their health, because we're showing them that we don't only care about the gorillas, but we also care about them, and healthcare is a basic human right. So anything like that helps to win over their support for conservation.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that very informative information. It's really wonderful what you're doing. I just am like, it's fascinating and amazing that you've been able to do all of this. And in this amount, I don't know how many, you've been doing this for maybe 30 years or something like that, I'm guessing. So it's amazing what you've accomplished. So really, thank you for that. So I think we'll move on to Henry, and I'll just do a brief introduction of Henry. This is Henry Diltz on our Zoom call today. And I first got to know Henry when I was teaching a course at Berklee College of Music called The Music of Laurel Canyon, and I kept seeing his name in books that I was reading when I was doing research, and I thought, well, I think I need to call this guy because it seems like he might be an interesting person. So I found Henry and I called him and I asked him to come to Berklee, so he came, and he kept coming back. So he came many times to my class and did a few other things for Berklee, and so we've become very, very good friends since then, and he's been so gracious to do many of these online fundraisers for us and show his photos and sell his photos, so it's been wonderful. He has also received awards in his career. Most recently, he got last year the Grammy Trustee Award, and he also, most recently, he put out a new book that documents Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, the 60s and his own history, which I haven't seen yet. I'm dying to see that book. He feels passionate about animals. He's on our board. He joined in 2018, I think, when we began. And he's a very busy man at the age of 85. He's in New Orleans today. And on his way back to LA later. And so he's going to tell you briefly about how he got started with his photography, and then he'll start telling you these great stories about all these photos. So thank you, Henry, for being here.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thank you very much. Yeah. First of all, thank you, Dr. Gladys. That was a wonderful talk about gorillas. I'm really going to read your book right away. And I'm always glad when my photos can help people or fellow creatures. I think that's just amazing. I mean, in the early 60s, I was a folk musician touring around the country, playing folk music with a quartet. Four of us were good friends, and we sang 4-part harmony. And after about 5 years of doing that, one day I accidentally picked up a camera in a secondhand store, and I started photographing all my friends who lived up in Laurel Canyon. And virtually all my friends were musicians. So, I mean, it was David Crosby sitting right there, and Stephen Stills, and Mama Cass, and just, Joni Mitchell and the Eagles, and all these people were friends of mine. And I started taking their picture, and one by one, they became famous, which was a good break for me. And so I've done a lot of album covers. And so we're offering a number of prints here that we sell in our Morrison Hotel gallery. And so they're up for auction. So hopefully people can get a good deal and maybe get one of their heroes to put on their wall. This particular picture is Crosby, Stills, Nash. Their album cover. It's one frame away from their album cover. I think on the album cover, Graham is looking at the camera. But this was a very popular album because their music was so beautiful. And this picture kind of felt like their music. Their music, we call it wooden music. I mean, it was just beautiful ballads and songs about life. And so it's a very popular album cover. In fact, I'm in New Orleans, and yesterday I took a picture. You hear music? I'm hearing a bunch of music right now. Somebody's joined us with the radio on. Is that right? Okay, there we go. So anyway, this is one of the pictures that is up for sale, and the proceeds will go to help the gorillas in Africa, which I think is fabulous. I'm so happy that that I can help in this way. So let's see the next picture, and we can move on here. There is Paul McCartney with his wife, Linda. This was taken in 1971 out in Malibu, California. I had met his wife, Linda, at a photo lab. We were fellow photographers. I met her before she married Paul. And so we became good friends. And then one day I was amazed to read that she married Paul McCartney. She called me one day to come out to their place in Malibu to take a picture. So we spent the day around the swimming pool talking and photographing. And then she said, I want to see these first thing in the morning because we want one to be the cover of Life magazine, which was sort of the holy grail for photographers back then when there was a Life magazine. And so this was my accidental cover of Life magazine, which I love so much. Paul is such an amazing person, such a gentleman, just a wonderful guy. He was here. Before that music started, I was saying, I'm here in New Orleans to take a picture that's an homage to that Crosby, Stills, Nash. I'm here with the group Spinal Tap. They're doing a movie. And yesterday we got a couch just like that and got the guy sitting on the couch. And Paul McCartney, right there, it looks just like that. And Paul McCartney is in the movie as well. So, boy, it's all coming around here. We're in the moment. This is the group America, who had Horse with No Name and Sister Golden, a very popular group. I mean, every time you go into an elevator or the supermarket, you hear their music playing. It's very, very popular. And this was a trip we took out to the desert to spend the night in the desert at a little palm oasis. And when we got there, bats were flying around in the evening, and the guy in front, Dewey, with the hat, wanted to run up on the mountain and look at the bats. And so my partner, Gary Burden, a graphic artist, he said, why don't you all go up there and bring this mirror with you? We carried a mirror out into the desert to use as an effect. And so they walked up there on top of this hill and carried that mirror. And I was looking through my telephoto lens. They were quite far away. And I could see a white dot moving up and down, bouncing in that mirror as they walked. And I said, hey, you guys, stand still for a minute. And they stood still. And that was the moon coming up behind us in the valley. And the sun is setting on the far side. So that's one of the photos we are offering for auction. Let's see the next one.
Beautiful.
Here it is. Mama Cass, who we called the Gertrude Stein of Laurel Canyon, because she was such an earth mother. And she loved everyone and wanted to help everyone. And she is the lady who introduced Graham Nash from the English group The Hollies, introduced him to David Crosby and Stephen Stills, who were singing together. And she knew they needed a third voice. And she knew that Graham was unhappy in the Hollies because they would never record his songs. And so she introduced Graham to the other two guys, and that created Crosby, Stills, and Nash, one of the most beloved sort of 60s, 70s music groups. So there is dear Mama Cass. Everyone loved her so much. Okay, next picture. Aha, this is the Eagles. And the Eagles are laying down on the ground. They did an album called Desperado, because they said, you know, if we were living instead of in 1972, if we were living in 1872, we probably would have been, you know, gunslingers. We would have been, you know, out looking for adventure and money and girls. And so they wrote this album about being a Western outlaw. And so we had a picture, an actual photo from the 1800s showing the posse, the lawmen, posing with the dead outlaws. And so that's what we created here. And my partner, Gary Burden, the graphic artist, is the guy on the left holding the rifle there with the hat and the vest. And so this was the back of the Desperado album. And it's a picture I love so much because it looks so real. It was real, but it looks historical, you know, it really does. Okay, next photo. Hello, there it is. Ah, peace and love, Ringo Starr. Lovely guy. I mean, of the Beatles, I photographed Paul McCartney a lot and Ringo Starr a lot. Never photographed John Lennon. Photographed George Harrison at the Bangladesh concert, but Ringo and I became buddies through the years. Ringo likes to photograph as well. One of my hobbies, one of the things I like to photograph is forks, you know, a fork that you eat, because you sit at the restaurant and you're waiting for the menu and the waiter, and there's the fork sitting there, kind of reflecting colors from the ceiling. And so I have my little camera with me, and I always take pictures of the forks. Now, Ringo, I found out, likes to photograph spoons. For the same reason, the spoon is sitting there, and if there's colored lights on the ceiling, you see that all reflected in the spoon. So it's fun to, you know, to collect pictures like that. So we're buddies, and there he is, Ringo Starr, peace and love. I'm wearing Ringo's peace and love birthday bracelet right here. That's one of the pictures you can buy to help the gorillas in Africa. Hooray! And people, you know, people, I have a photo gallery called the Morrison Hotel Gallery, and people are constantly buying pictures of their heroes to put on their wall so that when they walk in at the end of the day, they see their hero on the wall. And I've had many people say, oh, wow, thank you. It's so great, you know, to have that every day. Let's see the next photo. And what do we got? The Doors. There's Jim Morrison. And he's sitting in a bar, which we discovered in Skid Row in LA. We were doing the Morrison Hotel album cover for their record. And then Jim said, let's go get a drink. So we went down to Skid Row and we found this little bar, which was actually called the Hard Rock Cafe. And that was the first, I mean, no one had heard of anything called the Hard Rock Cafe. They put their album out, and on the back of the album, they had a picture of the Hard Rock Cafe, and they got a call from London right away. It said, would you mind if we use that name? We're starting a cafe here in London, and we'd like to call it the Hard Rock Cafe. And they said, sure, go ahead. And that became the world famous Hard Rock Cafe chain. And it was right, that was the place right there. I'm shooting I'm inside the bar looking out at the doorway. And it was around, it says Happy New Year up on the wall. It was December of 69. And once again, the guy way in the back, kind of towards the left side with the dark hair and the beard, sort of three from the right. That's my partner, Gary Burden, again. He does, he shows up in these pictures, which I love. Okay, and next, wow, there it is. Joni Mitchell in her very, very, very fine house in Laurel Canyon. We had gone, once again, Gary Burden and I had gone up to her house. We were the team that got called whenever they needed publicity photos or album covers, and we knew the managers and we knew the groups. So they said, Joni needs some publicity photos, go up to her house. So we walked up the steps and she was waiting in the window right there. That was her waiting for us. And so my friend Gary started talking to her for about 5 minutes, and it allowed me to walk around and take about 20 or 30 photos of her in the window, which turned out to be the pictures. Later we went up and back and spent a couple of hours, but none of them were as good as this first photo when we first saw her waiting for us. So that's a very popular picture. Okay, Neil Young, the favorite of many, many people. His music is so much a part of our lives. Certain of us, certainly. I mean, people my age, we revere Neil Young. So anyway, they were playing a concert in a baseball stadium, no, a football stadium. You could see that behind him. And they didn't have any dressing rooms. They were right out on the stage for about an hour before the concert. And he is sitting at the piano, tuning his guitar. And I wanted to take a picture of that, but I didn't want to get in his way. So I got down on my knees and took that photo. And it's his Gretsch guitar there pointing out. So that's a popular photo. Okay, next. Wow, this is Neil at his ranch called Broken Arrow Ranch. And that's his little dog, Hart, Harte, named after the Western short story writer, Bret Harte. And he owned the whole valley, and there were several barns and several herds of cows. And we would go up there, Gary Burden and I would go up there and spend the weekend and do a whole bunch of pictures of Neil for songbooks and publicity and stuff. Nowadays, it would be for social media. So anyway, yeah, that's called Neil Young Ranch. That's one of our most popular photos in our gallery. Okay, what do we got next? Wow, James Taylor. I got a call from his manager, Peter Asher. He said, Henry, are you busy this afternoon? Could you come down to my house and photograph this young songwriter that we're going to do an album for? And so I went to Peter's house. And I walked in the living room, and that's what I saw. It was James Taylor. I'd never met him before. And he was sitting on the floor underneath the piano, just playing his guitar. And I walked up, and he was finger picking Oh, Susanna. It sounded like a music box. It was so beautiful. And I just got down on my knees. And those were the first pictures I took. And then I said, now we need to go outside. So we went out to a friend's sort of musical commune. And we took pictures of him out there by these old barns, and that became the cover of Sweet Baby James. So this was a couple hours before we took the cover of Sweet Baby James, one of my favorite songs. Okay, and there's Frank Zappa, a fellow alumni from Laurel Canyon. He famously lived in a big house that used to be the cowboy Tom Mix. It was Tom Mix's house, and now Frank Zappa lived there. Laurel Canyon was a place where you didn't really raise a family because there were no lawns or sidewalks or places for kids to play. So mostly actors and musicians lived up there, and we were quite a group for about 20 years there. The late 60s, early 70s, into the 80s. Yeah. Okay, next. Tom Waits, a great writer and singer. And for this picture, a friend of mine said, hey, I'm going to interview Tom Waits. Will you want to come along? And so I went with my friend Stephen Peoples. He's out of sight on the left. And it wasn't even a photo job. I was just there watching. Tom Waits was in a little room writing music for a movie, which I can't recall right now. Yeah. Anyway, he was doing the soundtrack for a movie. So they had him stuck in this room that only had room for the piano, and there were papers all over the floor. And I just stood there taking pictures while my friend interviewed him. But he's a great musician, Tom Waits. Okay. And well, there's the Morrison Hotel. That is the Doors album cover that Gary Burden and I did. Right after we did the Crosby, Stills, Nash on the Couch, these guys liked that photo, and they said, would you do our photo? So we went over to meet them, and we said, okay, you have a title? They said, no, we don't have a title. We said, okay, do you know what kind of picture you want on your cover? No, we don't know any, we don't have any ideas. And then the keyboard player on the left there, the guy on the far left, Ray Manzarek, he just spoke up. He said, my wife Dorothy and I were driving through downtown LA the other day, and we saw this funky old hotel called the Morrison Hotel. And Gary and I went, wow, I mean, that sounds perfect. Let's go down and look at it. We did, and we went back a week later with the band. We walked in. So it says rooms $2.50. It was where winos could rent a cot, a little bed to lay on and sleep off their drunkenness, So it was an interesting little place. And we walked in the lobby, and the guy behind the desk said, oh, you can't take any pictures in here. I said, why? He said, well, the landlord, you got to get his permission, and he's not around, and he would get very angry. And so I said, okay, guys, we got to walk outside. And we stood outside in front of that window. And then I looked, and I saw that light go on right in the middle of the picture, that white light. And I looked in there, I said, wow, that's the elevator light. The guy at the desk just went up in the elevator. Quick, you guys, run in there. And they ran in there. And we took one roll of film, 5 minutes, and that was the album cover. And it's fairly well known around the world because, the Doors are quite a popular group. It was December of '69. You can see the Christmas tree in the lobby behind them there next to that elevator light. All right, well, are there any more? Jimi Hendrix at Woodstock. He was supposed to close the show Sunday night, but they were so backed up, the other groups had taken so long that he didn't go on stage until Monday morning. And as the sun was coming up, as it was just getting bright, he walked out on stage and played, and that was quite amazing. And I just happened to be there standing on stage taking photos. So he was, no one will ever play the guitar like Jimi Hendrix. He was quite a guy and a fun guy to photograph. So that's my Woodstock. Here's another favorite of mine. I love all these guys. I love their music. It's the music of my life and many others. And Jackson Browne, wow. I mean, what a songwriter, what a voice. That plaintive voice, those beautiful songs. It's just so beautiful. When I was a folk singer, we never wrote folk songs. Those were 100-year-old songs. But in the early 70s, people started, Joni Mitchell and Stephen Stills and Graham Nash, people started writing their own music. And, they didn't have songwriters and singers. The singers became the songwriters. And that was very, very interesting to hear their own thoughts and feelings about life and love. And so this one, we had to borrow this station wagon. No, it was a Chevy, a Bel Air Chevy. We had to borrow it from a friend of his, a girl who was waiting in the back seat. And you can see her feet up there. She's actually just waiting till we finish up with her car so she can drive it home. And that's her feet sticking up there. So, okay, that's that one. Jackson Browne, great. There's Jackson Browne at the home that his grandfather built in Pasadena or out that way. Yeah. Beautiful home, all hand built, every brick by his grandfather. So I love that picture. That's a great portrait of Jackson. There's the sweet baby James. This is one of my favorite pictures because Sweet Baby James was such a beautiful song, and I sang it to both of my little kids, my son and my daughter, when they were babies, you know, rock-a-bye, sweet baby James, and to put them to sleep. And so I sure love James Taylor's singing and writing as well. And this, a color picture of this was used for the album cover, but it was kind of cropped funny and blown up really big. But this is the picture that I really love. That is Sweet Baby James, one of my favorite portraits. Here's my dear pal, David Cassidy. I was hired to go shoot the Partridge Family TV show for magazine, for young girl, teeny bopper magazines, we called them. And I got to be really good friends with David and ended up touring all over the world with him. So this was a party at a German writer's house. And there's Arnold Schwarzenegger there on the right. Some years ago, gosh, this would have been early 70s. And the guy on the left pointing at David is a Mr. World. I forget his name at the moment, but he was also a bodybuilder. And it's just so funny, David. David is just such a great guy, and we had so much fun traveling all over the world while he did concerts and interviews. So I miss him. He's on the other side. He's at the party on the other side with Crosby and Glenn Fry and my partner, Gary Burden, and all those people are over there. It's going to be fun to go there one day. Here's Neil Young. He loved old cars. And so he had just bought this old Chevy. It was not Chevy, excuse me. This old station wagon, but a wooden station wagon, I guess probably from the 40s or 50s. And he had just bought it, and he'd driven it to Gary Burden's house, which is that white house behind him. And he was just looking in it there, trying to figure out how he was going to refurbish it. So this is a really nice photo because Neil is so much into old cars and stuff that that was a great moment right there, I think. Okay, that's the lot. There was about 20 maybe, something like that. So I hope you people will bid on these pictures because you'll get a good deal, and you can put your hero on your wall and help those lovely gorillas in Africa. Hooray!
Thank you so much, Henry.
Yes.
I never get tired of hearing these stories. And
Yes.
as a matter of fact, I'm wondering if the Tom Waits one was for the movie called Smoke, because he did the soundtrack for this movie Smoke, which was a
No, One from the Heart.
Oh, okay.
It was that guy Zoetrope. What's the name of that director? Well, I can't remember.
Well, anyway,
names escape me. You know, that's okay.
that's
I'm
okay.
here, and you know, you're there. We're all we're all here in life. Hooray for that.
Okay, well, it was really great having both of you today, Henry and Gladys, and I think we've had a little bit of streaming issues today, but it did manage to get onto Instagram, so some people will be able to watch it on that, and I've recorded it, so pretty soon I'll be able to put it up on our Facebook page and possibly on the website too, so that people can see it there.
Good.
So we'll
That's
have.
good. Hooray.
So I wanted to thank.
The photos are amazing. Like,
Well, thank you so much. Yeah. They're just friends. I mean, you have a curiosity for gorillas, and I have a curiosity for people, you know, musicians. I like to watch. I hope I get a chance to watch the gorillas. I would be fascinated by that. Wow.
have you to come and visit and
Maybe see you one day. Thank you,
hosting
Doctor.
it soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
Well, I know that there's people bidding already, so hopefully, I'm hoping we can raise some good funds for you, Gladys. And thank you so much, Henry, for offering all of
Sure.
those photos. And I want to thank all the members of my board who've been so helpful in getting this together. And let's see, what else I have to write things down because I don't remember what I'm supposed to say.
James Taylor.
What? Did somebody say something? I just heard some sound there. I guess it's gone.
I like the portrait. I like the portrait of Jim Taylor playing a guitar in
Yeah,
Maine,
me
cowboy
too.
boots.
Yeah, that is one of
Mr. Henry,
my,
that's amazing.
thank you. One of my favorite portraits. Yeah.
It's really beautiful.
Hey, Suzanne, I just remembered Francis Ford Coppola,
Oh, okay.
One from the Heart. That's the movie that Tom Waits was in that little room writing all the music for.
Okay. Well, I'll have to, I don't know if I've seen that one or not, but I know Smoke is
Okay.
really, he does
Oh, I'll have to watch that.
great movie, really great movie.
Thanks. Okay.
Thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate, you being able to come, both Gladys and Henry, and Rick being able to join us. And it's just been wonderful. I hope that I can come to Uganda someday and see the gorillas and meet you. I would really like to do that. So maybe I can do that sometime next year. I would love to do that, and bring my daughter Emily as well. So
And bring me too, okay? Bring me too.
and I'll bring Henry too, yes. We'll all go together. That'll be a trip.
Yeah.
And Rick as well.
Yeah, definitely Rick. As a matter of fact, we're going to try to go to the IUCN conference. Gladys, do you go to that? We're going to try, we can't join yet because we're not big enough, but we're going to, at least Rick is going to try to go in 2025, which would be fantastic. And I'll try.
Where will it be held in 2025?
It's going to be in
Where
Dubai,
would
Yeah,
In
it's
Dubai.
Dubai in October of 2025. Yeah.
far away from here, but I think it'd be wonderful to go to that. So.
Dr. Gladys, I do have a question before we go. Since I know that the live stream was a little funky during your chat,
Yes.
if we get more questions from people watching it, because I'm obviously going to be sharing the ever-loving crap out of that talk. If we get some more questions, would you be okay with potentially doing like a follow-up video or chat, or even by email, just to answer questions that anybody else may potentially have?
Yeah, I'll be happy to.
Fantastic.
Definitely,
I
I'll
think
be
that
happy
would be
to.
That's great, Rick.
And we'd love to share the.
And also, Dr. Glass, would you like to mention that you're going to be stateside this year for
Yes, I will.
activations of your book?
I'll be attending the Wildlife Conservation Network Expo in April, 20th April, and South Carolina at the International Primate Protection League Conference. That will be next weekend.
Wow.
I'll be speaking there. And yes, and hopefully I'll also be back again. I may be going to Boston, somewhere in between, but at least I'll be New York, California, and Boston. And hopefully I'll be returning in October again to speak in California and the Henry Diltz Zoo in Omaha, Nebraska. So I'll keep you updated.
And when will you be in New York?
I'll be in New York between the 15th and the 17th, and possibly the following week as well, of April.
Oh, because I'm going to be down there on the 25th.
So, Dr. Glass,
Is there any chance you'll be there on the 25th of April or the 26th?
On the 26th, I'll look and
would
see.
it be possible for
Let you know.
And then when are you going to be in California? Are you going to be in Los Angeles, or where are you going to be in California?
I'll be in San
would it be possible
Francisco.
for Ken to
I'll be in San Francisco, but I'll be back
see
in
the schedule?
I'll be in Los Angeles later in the year. I'll be giving a class at University of Southern California, maybe late October, early November, and also doing something to National Geographic there. So I'll let you know later in the year when I'm in California for sure. It would be great to maybe link up with you, Henry.
Yes. Suzanne, when you find out, Suzanne, let us all know the schedule, okay?
I will. So do you have, Gladys, do you have a schedule like on the website or something, or do you have a?
I do. Kani needs to update it.
Sorry, Dr. Gladys.
Okay.
Dr. Gladys, let me take that action point. Sorry. Dr. Gladys has a team of people that work with her. So yes, we'll share with you the latest information so that you don't have to bombard Dr. Gladys as a single person. She has a team behind.
I'm sorry, you got cut out there.
Okay.
My husband.
there, and we'll share with you.
That's great. That's really helpful. Okay,
Pleasure.
well,
But thanks for reminding us. We're going to update everything on the website, so it's easier to see.
Yeah.
well, please let me know if you might end up being in New York on the 25th. And the 26th is actually my birthday, and it's a big one this year. So anything I can do to make it a happy one would be will be good. And I love to go to New York anyway, so that makes me happy. But it would be wonderful if you happen to be there then. And otherwise, we'll meet at some other point in time. So
Happy birthday! Wow.
you. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate you coming today, and I'm hoping that we can get this out so that a lot of people can see it, and I hope we can raise
Hooray.
funds for you.
And
So,
speaking about birthdays, actually, Dr. Jane Goodall, who wrote the foreword, this week
Oh,
is her 90th birthday.
yes, just 2
Wow.
days
Her
ago.
birthday 2 days ago.
Oh, lovely lady.
Yes. Okay, well, thank you very
Okay,
much,
bye.
everybody, and
And thank you so much for organizing this. I'm so excited.
it's my pleasure. Thank you so much. Okay,
So much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you so much.
bye.
Peace and love.
Thanks, Mum, for joining the call. Mum, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
all.
you.
Joining the call and the
That's
6PH
lovely.
Thanks,
team.
LZ.
Wonderful.
LZ is simple, landing zone.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.